Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture in this benighted age, one weekly conversation at a time. You can find and subscribe to this podcast via Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and a whole bunch of other venues. Just visit our site, vmspod.com, to find more information, as well as our RSS feed, which you can plug into any podcatcher so you never miss an episode of the Virtual Memories Show. You can also follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube, where I go by vmspod, and subscribe to my semi-weekly newsletter at buttondown.com/vmspod. Well, I am off to Washington, D.C. and Silver Spring shortly for some meetings and the kickoff of an every 5 years negotiation with FDA. I've already had a few moments of rage-filled explosions and have had to remind myself that it's a negotiation. It's going to take 5 or 6 months. People's initial positions are not necessarily where we're going to end up. I've also made my association's position pretty clear to the other parties involved. At least I think it's been pretty clear. I'm not sure how seriously they take me. I think I've mentioned it before, either here or in the newsletter, but this negotiation, as I said, comes up every 5 years. My first one was 2015-16, and it's 3 or 4 different industry groups plus FDA. And the weird thing is I'm now in the position of being the elder statesman this round. Like all the other industry association reps who were at the previous ones have either left the associations or this mortal coil. And so I'm now the guy who has the experience and actually knows how things have gone before and can kind of prevail on everybody about, that's not how we've done things in the past. We need to make sure we're accommodating X, Y, and Z. Anyway, this is not a position I ever thought I'd be in, but I used to joke about having a career by attrition where I just outlasted everybody else. Now it seems to have borne true yet again. So anyway, following week, I am off to a pharma trade show in Frankfurt and then spending a few days in London and Cambridge to see friends and record a couple of shows. I might post a second episode this week to get ahead a little bit and to hype a friend's Kickstarter, but we'll see how much time I can carve out. After I come back from the FDA negotiation the next morning, I have to go speak at a conference in New Brunswick, New Jersey. But, I may make a side trip to Brooklyn on the way home and record with a pal. In the meantime, let's get to this week's show. My guest this time is the writer Ron Rosenbaum, who is marking his 4th appearance on the Virtual Memories Show. Ron has a wonderful new book out today being October 21st, 2025, for you time travelers out there. The book is called Bob Dylan, Things Have Changed, with the second subtitle of A Kind of Biography. It's from Melville House Press, and, well, it's a book that kind of encompasses Ron's life just as it tells the story of Bob Dylan. Things Have Changed, which I'll call it instead of Bob Dylan, Things Have Changed. Things Have Changed explores Dylan through his songs and their impact on the world. I'll say some of Ron's best works and his best known works, like explaining Hitler and the Shakespeare Wars, are less about the phenomenon itself and more about what our perceptions or reactions to the phenomenon say about us. And that mode is at play in this book. But it's a little different this time because of Ron's personal connection to Dylan's songs, as well as the week he spent interviewing Dylan in the 70s. And that all creates a more personal dynamic to the book. We talk about whether there are memoiristic elements, both in terms of the life moments of Ron's that weave their way into this book, as well as some of the underlying themes of his work and how those are reflected in his exploration of Dylan. So that is, it's one thing to talk with scholars and the like about Shakespeare or Hitler, but it's another thing to have this direct, ongoing, contemporaneous experience with, in this case, the Bob Dylan. And the book is filled with these amazing and profound explorations of Dylan's work and life through his lyrics, while retaining a personal and an unself-conscious voice. Like for Ron, the question of what drove Dylan, what helped form him, what his influences are, what's reflected in the songs and the statements and the sort of memoir in the book Chronicles and the Nobel lecture from 2016, where Ron really brings out something unexplored in Dylan's work previously. All that stuff adds up to the one mind that we talk about during our conversation. The nature, that overarching consciousness of Dylan as an artist and as somebody who has a visionary approach to the world. And Ron gets deep on the nature of influence and the overthrowing of influence to make works of true genius, which I think Dylan does. And at the same time, he really, in a number of ways, tries to get at the nature of Dylan's crack up in the late 70s when he joined a Jesus freak cult and became this angry scold of a preacher. The breakdown, Dylan's recovery from it, and the ways he himself and audiences and others reacted to Dylan in those different phases of his career, that all fascinates Ron, and he approaches it in some really, really intriguing ways. So Things Have Changed is a book of deep love and deep frustration, which I guess makes it like a marriage. But the history Ron has with Dylan's work, the sense of betrayal that he experiences from the Jesus period, his own experience sitting for a week and talking with Dylan for an interview he did for Playboy back in the 70s. All that stuff builds this amazing mosaic. And Ron, well, he draws all these connections and it's what he does best is deep reading. And he does a deep reading of Dylan through Dylan's lyrics and through, again, some of the statements, the unsaid statements, the way songwriting changed. It's really a profound book. I enjoyed the living heck out of Things Have Changed. And I came away with I'd say a new appreciation for Dylan's ambiguities, which I was not blind to begin with. And also what our readings or listenings of him say about us. And I've been reading Ron's work for 30 years plus, and I knew for a long time there was a Dylan book coming someday, and I'm awfully glad this is the one. So go get Bob Dylan, Things Have Changed, a kind of biography by Ron Rosenbaum, out now from Melville House Press. Now, as caveats go, Ron's hearing isn't so good, so I had to speak pretty loudly. You'll pick up on that. And here's Ron's bio. Ron Rosenbaum is the author of 7 books, among them Explaining Hitler, a New York Times bestseller, and The Shakespeare Wars, which Cynthia Ozick called electrifying, a spectacular book. David Remnick, editor of The New Yorker, called Rosenbaum one of the most original journalists and writers of our time. He's been a Dylan fan since he was a teen and a guest here several times. And now, the 2025 Virtual Memories conversation with Ron Rosenbaum. So how did the book change for you? What was it when you first started writing this, and how did it change?
God, I think back to the first time the name Bob Dylan crossed my path, sort of, and it was on an LP that Joan Baez did of his covers before he even released a record. And I fell in love with this one song, Boots of Spanish Leather, that I played over and over by Joni and then by him. And you ask how I've changed. I'm not sure I changed that much. I think the very same things I loved about him are the ones I do now. Particularly, I say in my book, Dylan owns remorse. Dylan owns regret. There's no one who can capture the pain, the suffering, the beautiful suffering of a lost love. So how have I changed? I'm not sure. I know he's changed. His most recent masterpieces, like Blind Willie McTell, are not love songs by any means. But on the other hand, I was the first to hear Desolation Row when he debuted it at Forest Hills in 1965. Acoustic, but just a bewildering array of characters that I now describe as the funeral march of Western civilization. Because, of course, it opens with something people didn't realize for a long time, postcards of the hanging. That was the hanging of brown people, and the row was the row of broken-necked brown people hanging from trees that is sort of a desolation that our country can never recover from. So he's not just a higher level of Moon June romanticism. He's a higher level of American poetry at its best.
How did the book change, when you started writing this versus what it became?
I'm not sure it did. I think I was making mental notes for years, ever since I heard that Joan Baez record, and paying attention to every twist and turn he went. Sometimes I would twist and turn. At first, when he released that Nashville album, Nashville Skyline, I was down on it. How could he do this? Turn from this acerbic, acrid, brilliant guy to a country crooner. But then I fell in love during the song. I fell in love during a party where they were playing I Threw It All Away. And I had just thrown away, stupidly probably, a beautiful romance with a woman who could see I didn't want to settle down and get married. And so I got a little inebriated on various substances at the party, and it was a Village Garrett party, and I was singing out loud to my shame, I threw it all away. And this really cute girl in a brown velour mini shift piped up and said, but don't think twice. And I think of it as love at first sight, CITE. And we spent the next 3 years together. So I no longer felt the same way about that country album, especially the cover, where he's tipping his hat. Is he tipping his hat hello or goodbye? Everything about him has a mystery to it, which is what I love. I'm an investigative reporter. I love mysteries.
Do you feel he's solvable as a mystery?
Actually, in this book, in the last chapter, which I call Dylan's Last Album, I feel, and I'm not going to give it away, no spoiler here, I have discovered what no one else has written about certainly as this. What made Dylan Dylan, Dylan's Rosebud? So buy the book and you'll find out.
Yeah, I won't give any spoilers either. So I found it illuminating, definitely, to see that deep exploration, taking the Ron Rosenbaum technique and applying it to Dylan like this. I knew this was coming for years and years, but seeing how you approach him, it works. I was very happy with the by the time I reached the end of the book. So.
Well, it was one thing that really surprised me. It's been overlooked by almost everyone. And it comes at the end of a eloquent tour de force. Actually, it starts out like a boring book report and ends up an eloquent tour de force, ferocious. Dylan at his best, and hundreds of Dylan books. I haven't seen one that mentions it.
Tell me about the approaching Dylan through the lyrics, which is largely the approach you take. I mean, you take biographical fact and your own interview with him from the 70s, but it's about the lyrics in a way that's similar to how you approached poetry when you were starting out at Yale and beyond.
Well, he is a poet. It's kind of stupid. I still run into half-educated people who never have read poetry who say, "Oh, he's not a poet," because he puts his words to music. I don't want to brag. Well, I do want to brag.
Yeah, brag.
I was a Phi Beta Kappa in English literature with high honors from Yale, and dropped out of Yale Graduate School because it was too academic for me to take seriously. So I'm always looking beyond the surface of the words to deeper meanings and or sometimes shallower meanings than are on the page. But you never should be satisfied with just one reading.
Mm-hmm. So, in Dylan's Nobel speech, he talks about these are songs meant to be sung. I don't know what they mean either, and people spend all their time trying to figure out meaning, but there's nothing there. He's full of crap, right? I mean, you feel he's just putting up a blind.
He never likes to be pinned down. He never likes people to say, "Oh, this is secretly what he means," or what. But he means something, and it may not be obvious. So, is it secret? I don't know. But if I were him, and I'd written so much great stuff with multiplicity of meanings, as we used to say in Yale Graduate School, 7 types of ambiguity. He doesn't, just by the very word ambiguity, he doesn't want to be pinned down to one or the other. He wants both at the same time, or maybe 7 at the same time. And those who try to decode him like the Enigma machine are going to be hit by a lot of German submarines. So,
how much is this book sort of a biography of you and not just a biographical meditation of Dylan? I mean, there's the explicit aspects of your life that are in the book, but there's also a lot of subtext and threads that feel like...
Some early reviewer, very rhapsodic, I must thank him, said that it was memoiristic in parts, and so I can't help conceding that the effect Dylan had on my life was a serious and a great one, and don't want to disclaim it. So I probably wouldn't have found my way as deep into his songs if they hadn't found their way as deep into me.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, I was thinking, besides the falling in love and the moments of your life, there's also things like the Salinger connection,
The
and J.D. Salinger,
Yeah.
and Theodicy as the over theme of your work and what you see in his. The book is sort of a Ron code also.
What came to me, first of all, it's not well known that Dylan was a Salinger freak. There's an anecdote about him when he just came to New York, curled up in the middle of some village party, telling people he was going to play Holden Caulfield in a film based on Salinger's book. What I think is that the combination of Salinger and Dylan changed American language. There's an eye roll to all our speech, just about. There's a, oh yeah, right, to everything we say. And it comes from Salinger, it comes from Dylan, and what they have in common, and what few people still know, is that Salinger comes from Dachau. Salinger landed on Normandy, fought his way with his battalion across Europe, liberated Dachau while the smoke was still coming from the crematoria, and it affected him forever, turned him into a Buddhist. And I think some of that element of Salinger was taken up by Dylan in not in maybe a less obvious way, but in a way that he's not going to take people who vaunt Western civilization with such admiration and haven't been to Dachau, where the smoke was still rising.
It's that question of evil, the question of evil and the presence of God that permeates the book. I mean, you sort of contrast it with songs of love and regret and an argument with God as two of the major threads of Dylan's.
Well, the word
song.
theodicy figures throughout my book. And theodicy is not a synonym. No, it's certainly not a synonym. It's not a synonym for theology. It's the subdiscipline of religious studies which tries to reconcile the presence of radical evil, Hannah Arendt's original word for it, in the world, with a supposedly all-powerful, loving and just God. What's the deal? Why did God not lift a finger when his people allegedly were being slaughtered in Auschwitz? And you can read all sorts of Jewish and Christian theologians who make excuses for God. Dylan ain't got no excuses for God. And I frankly agree with him. There are no excuses. I don't believe in that kind of God. I don't believe in any monotheistic, all-powerful guy with superpowers in heaven who looks benignly upon the slaughter of innocent people and 1.5 million children, doesn't do a thing. That's ingrained in Dylan. He had his bar mitzvah about the same span of years that the Eichmann trial shocked the world. We shouldn't have been shocked, but the figure 6 million became a routine, descriptive and cover-up for what happened. Oh, 6 million, you can, that's really bad. Let's not investigate what enabled humans to do that. Anyway, what was the question? The argument with God. Yeah. So you can find, if you look closely enough, explicitly in many songs and subterraneously in many others, an argument with the idea of an all-powerful, all-loving deity.
Did your interest in theodicy predate your Dylan interest? Did Dylan lead you into theodicy, or did theodicy lead you into Dylan, or did they overlap?
No, it was more my book, Explaining Hitler, in which I ended up talking with a lot of Jewish and Christian theologians about this very problem. And for me, the great moment was in the office of Yehuda Bauer, who is recognized as the great historian of the Holocaust in the Jewish University in Jerusalem. And Bauer said, described this deity as notable by his absence during the Holocaust. And he said, I believe he said, I don't want a God who's all-powerful, just, and loving, and yet allows evil to prevail. That kind of God is a Nebush or Satan. Wow, this guy is not some raggedy atheist. He's a great scholar. And that impressed me because in some way I felt this similar but less articulate way, although I liked Nebush or Satan as a way of describing God. And I think if you look closely, that's Dylan's image of God as well, even as a song like Every Grain of Sand. Well, every grain of sand, every sparrow that falls means not just everything good that happens, but everything evil that happens. He's not sifting the good from the evil. He's allowing the evil to prevail over the good, as it does mostly. So at the very end, I don't want no spoilers, but he says, look at Western civilization. Look at all the philosophers of thousands of years ago. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. What has all that done to prevent what we've seen in the 2 world wars? Nothing, zero, nada. And we have to live pretending that this wisdom protects us from the butchery that has prevailed, the bloodiest century in history, and that counts a lot of bloody centuries.
One of the directions of the book, or one of the ways you approach it, you talk about how the arc of continuity is the downfall of biographies, that people's lives don't fit, a standard curve or anything. Within Things Have Changed, you really focus on the Jesus freak era, or kidnapping or brainwashing of Dylan, who he was before, what that couple of year span was, and then what comes after. How do you characterize what happened to Dylan and who he became?
I've changed my mind somewhat. For a long time, I didn't forgive him. I met with him out in L.A. shortly before he made this conversion from Jew to ranting, evangelical, born-again, apocalyptic, shouting preacher. And I stopped listening to him for a long time. But then I was thinking, about Dylan's self-confidence. This is like the most self-assured guy on the planet, I think. Did he know what he's doing, or was he brainwashed? Was his mind stolen? I don't know. He clearly believed in his ranting preacher self. It wasn't a fraud, a prank. For a while I thought maybe it was an Andy Kaufman-like thing. But he was someone who truly believed. And then I thought, did he have any self-recriminations, any self-regrets? And there's one song, Mississippi, which you can find, I think, on one of the Biograph albums. I think he did 3 versions of this song. And there's one line in that song where he says, and it's a great song, but he sings, stayed in Mississippi just a day too long. And for me, that's him allegorically saying, I stayed in that whole Christian meshugas too long. And he says later in the song, you can't come back. You can come back, but you can't come back all the way. I think, in some ways, he did come back. Like a song like Blind Willie McTell, and a song like Mississippi. And in my book, I list 10 songs of late Dylan period that live up to or exceed the best of his early
his pre-Jesus
period. I think the post-Jesus masterpieces are few and far between. You want me to read the ones
we'll get to them at the end. That'll be our little top Dylan songs listed. So, but it's how do you, I guess, characterize the post-Jesus work? I mean, in the book, you kind of break down the songwriting, from before and after, how he changes. But
I go way deep into epistemology on this one, because in a song like Things Have Changed, he has like 11 different voices, and it's once you realize this is not the voice of one person, but the voice of 11 different personae, you know, collectively the song makes sense. And well, I tell the story of the box. This is a great story. A movie studio gave Dylan an office, and everyone in Hollywood wanted to make a movie with Bob Dylan, and they all lined up, and they'd come in and say, Bob, we have this idea, or what do you want to do? And he'd take a cigar box. It was filled with a bunch of torn up clippings and stuffed to the brim, and he'd open up and they'd drift down like snowflakes into a pile of like an ash heap, and he'd say, that's what I want. And what he wanted really was his consciousness, the consciousness that would tear this piece of paper up, this ad up, this little quote up, et cetera, all one consciousness in that cigar box. You know, if you could somehow find a way of capturing the consciousness that united all of them. And a lot of his lyrics then, he doesn't really try to unite them. He just has them, he just says them out loud. And basically you're supposed to put it together yourself, but it's not easy. And for a lot of people, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And in some way, who cares? It's Bob Dylan's mind at this point in time, and it's interesting for that, even though it doesn't have the sonorous beauty of Blowing in the Wind.
It reminds me, of course, of Burroughs, William Burroughs and Byron Jason and the cut-up
in a way,
technique,
it's cut-up, or the poet John Ashbery.
Sure, yeah, the word collages you bring up. A songwriter I am friends with, I saw him on YouTube years and years ago telling a story from the 90s, how he met Dylan. Dylan praised my friend's songwriting.
Who is it?
David Bayerwald. He was in a band called David and David.
Okay. Sure. Welcome to
Boomtown. Yeah.
Welcome to Boomtown.
Yeah.
Right.
So he talks about meeting Dylan, and Dylan tells him he likes David's songwriting because all he can do now is take his song ideas out of a box. And David thought this was a metaphor, and then he realized, no, it's an actual box. He's literally pulling notes out and writing songs. Like he thought Dylan was being, cryptic and weird. He's
isn't
like,
that the greatest thing?
Yeah.
I mean, my friend, I have a friend who talked about the one consciousness in Dickens, and in a way, it's one mind in all his works. You can sort of find that one mind in a way. In my 20s, I had sort of a spiritual experience reading all of Dickens, and I got a sense of the one mind. And Dickens gives you in that box, when he empties it out, one mind, and he puts it in his songs. This is one mind. This is I care about this. I don't know why. I'm not sure, but it belongs together. You find out. And somewhere inside my cortex, these two scraps of paper have met and joined. So,
it makes me think of David Lynch. Also, Lynch's
David
Lynch, and the way the movies aren't going to add up. They're not going to tell you the story directly, but you're going to.
I don't know. I think Lynch is a big narrative guy.
Things break down.
The narratives don't make sense.
Okay,
but they make more sense than the scraps of paper.
Sure. I'll give you that. So, on the other side, we talk about this consciousness of Dylan, but at the same time, you bring it up in multiple instances in the book.
Know, the great thing is, I found this obscure story by the Argentine fabulist Jorge Luis Borges, and
that's what I was getting at. Go on.
Borges writes a story in which he imagines he takes up from a really dumb anti-evolutionist who tries to explain why dinosaur bones were found that seemed to indicate that the world was created later than BC 4004, as the biblical originalists claim. And he says God probably planted the dinosaur bones for man to discover them and to test his faith that they were there. And then Bertrand Russell said, and God could have planted our entire memory for everything but the last 2 minutes in us, and nothing else is real but what happened in the last 2 minutes. I just love that, and I think that, I don't know, somehow it connects to the discontinuity of selves.
That is exactly what I have written down here.
What Dylan believes in, that,
that wasn't me.
Cosmologists are now coming around to it. Roger Penrose believes in the successive universes, that one can believe in something existing that really exists, or just a memory of something that didn't exist, successive universes. I wish I could explain it at greater length, but
the book does a good job.
The book explains it anyway. Yes, I think that's in some ways that's the high point of the book, and I think people will really get a kick out of it, because Borges sort of proves that time doesn't necessarily exist. Only individual moments exist, like a film strip, a Hollywood film strip. Everyone in the strip, Jack Nicholson is in a cell in a still photographer's. Then there's Jack Nicholson in the next cell, and in the next cell, they're different people.
Yeah.
They're different selves. They only become one self when the projector gets them moving, and they seem to be one self. But in fact, Borges is saying that we're not a unified self. We're a succession of momentary photographs of a self, and who can argue against him?
How much do you think Dylan subscribes to that? I mean, he frequently has his "that wasn't me, I'm not there," that
I think what's forgotten is that Dylan is an omnivorous reader. When he first came to New York in that complete unknown period, he was couch surfing in the apartments of autodidacts and great readers, and who had huge bookshelves of ancient history and metaphysics, etc., etc. And he gobbled them up, and they became part of him. But what was the question again?
Just whether you think he believes this, or
I don't think he pins it down to Borges said.
Yeah.
I think it's just that he came to the same conclusion. And I think the key thing here is this kind of trick he does about authenticity and sincerity. He believes sincerity is fraudulent, that he has to sing the song Tangled Up in Blue. He's actually sung it, one website says, 1,200 times. How sincere can you be in singing the song for the 1,200th sign, or any other song for the 50th time? So what he believes is, what he says is, if you ask him about it, he says, that person who sung that song doesn't exist. He's not there. That's not him. It's not me. It ain't me, babe. All these ways of saying that song hasn't been sung by me, the Bob Dylan you're sitting across from before, until the last time I sung it, which was the first time I sung it, because all these other Dylans don't exist. Does that make sense?
It makes sense if you have to perform. It's always been that, how do you put on
look, Billy Joel performs so sincerely.
Yeah.
And that's what you get. You get this smarmy sincerity. Yeah. Dylan gives you something different every time, because in his mind, it's the first time he's sung the song, or he wants to believe, or he wants you to believe it's authentic because it's the first time he's ever sung it.
And that's what I found fascinating, the schism of that authenticity versus sincerity, and the never-ending tour. For somebody who has that anxiety about singing the song as though it matters, he goes out on tour all the time. It's always, out playing stuff.
That's why. See, I feel people complain sometimes that he's on tour. I think it's stupid to listen to Dylan on tour. This will be very controversial, because he knows it's not going to be authentic. He knows he's sung the song 1,200 times, so he mumbles it a bit or whatever. Distorts it a bit. But when he puts it down on a recording track, this guy is very serious. He'll do 25 different takes to get what his heart and soul know, or what's really inside him, what the song really has to say. And so I say, don't go to his concerts. Listen to his fucking records over and over again, and you'll learn a lot more than if you go to 100 concerts. I see all these people bragging they went to 100 concerts. They don't learn a fucking thing. Yeah. But if you listen to his albums, the songs he's choosing, the tracks he's choosing, you learn something more every single time. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a question I have around the interview you did back in the 70s. It was around a movie that Dylan was trying to make. The movie, Ronaldo and Clara.
What about it? I was there when he was finishing up this 4.5, 5 hour movie called Ronaldo and Clara. And it was just before he had what I think is a Fitzgeraldian nervous breakdown that made him vulnerable to the born-again evangelist cult that seized his brain. That's my opinion, Tim, but I think he was looking for something, because he was just tangled up in thousands of feet of film. And he ended up with a 4.5 hour film that featured someone named Ronaldo, who was not Bob Dylan, but was Bob Dylan. He had his ex-wife in the middle of a horrible divorce, custody battle, playing his girlfriend, and Joan Baez playing his wife, or maybe it was the other way around. It was doomed to failure. I tell the story I'm fond of this French girl in Soho who was a total Dylan freak. She was an artist, what can I say? She was just so in love with him. when the Ronaldo and Clara opened, she started going to every single showing, every day, every 4.5-hour showing there was for 26 days till Warner Brothers kind of gave up the ghost, took it out of the theaters. And by the time it ended, she was the only one in the theater, that sort of famous Village Theater where Woody Allen takes Annie Hall for
the Sorrow and the Pity.
The first date to Sorrow and the Pity. But this was the Sorrow and the Pity store, because she was the only one in the theater, sitting in the front row alone and watching the last showing. And I make a case in my book that Dylan Inc., or however you want to characterize it, Dylan himself, should release it, or put it into limited release, maybe at the Bob Dylan Center, because the rock and roll in it is super. It's probably the peak of his rock and roll career. And there's at least that. And for the gossip hungry, there's trying to figure out who was fucking whom and why and what's going on behind the scenes with Bob and Sarah and Joan, etc. I'm not sure it makes a great romantic epic, but don't miss it for the music.
The cultural artifact, you still want to see something that captured that era. That was part of the Ron experience with the book. As you mentioned in the book, the way you kind of helped bring Charles Portis back into print, trying to reclaim Ronaldo and Clara and get these people to give it some sort of life again. Felt like a Ron Rosenbaum thing. So
I would consider that at least a curatorial achievement and something he should be proud of. Look, it's very daring to do a 4.5-hour movie if you believe in every frame, and he did. So, he's been right so many times when people say he's wrong. Mm-hmm. Maybe he was right this time.
When you interviewed him while he was editing this, there's a moment you talk about in the book, the unfortunate influence of Allen Ginsberg on Dylan. And throughout the book, you wonder how he fell in with the Jesus freaks the way he did. And I started wondering whether the way he fell in with Ginsberg may have predicted the way he would fall or succumb to the Jesus freaks that
you might have something there, although Ginsberg was this faux Buddhist.
Not as pernicious or horrible an influence, but he
might seem to convince Dylan he needs some religious faith. But I remember how tense it was when I flew out to L.A. to interview Dylan. They Playboy had arranged for me to have like 2 or 3 hours a day for a week or more, and but first I had to take a test. I had to see the 4.5-hour movie, and fortunately, my English major background helped me. I could see completely the malign Ginsberg schematic behind it. So I did something I never should have done, never would have had the nerve to do, but walked into where Dylan was in his office and said, "Look, Bob, I don't think we should do this at all if we're not on the same page." And I think we were on the same page. So, then I gave a 4.5-minute summary of the Ginsberg version of it, and he looked hurt. Dylan looked hurt that I got it so fast, and he didn't realize what a schlock thing Ginsberg was doing to him. But anyway, so he looked hurt. So his response was to insult me. He said, "You must have been speaking to Ginsberg, huh?" You know, it was like you were cribbing from this genius guy. When, of course, Ginsberg had convinced him that Ginsberg, was a genius and Dylan was just his acolyte, when it was the opposite way around. But anyway, I felt it was a badge of honor to be insulted by Dylan. So then we went forward with the interview for a little more than a week, I think.
You mentioned in the book being really nervous going into it and you know, having a drink or two before, but did you?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I had, you know, spent some time before the interview making yellow pad after yellow pad of notes of questions. And I still felt, you know, I wasn't going to get to the nitty gritty. And I was really nervous about it. So I bought a half pint of tequila and brought it into this little bungalow where we were meeting for the interview. He, of course, was chain smoking cigarettes, so it wasn't like we were the purest duo ever. And I think they were strong French Guitains. And I do have a riff in my book about how expressive Dylan could be in smoking a cigarette and gesturing with it. It was he often said more with a gesture with the French cigarette smoke than he would with the English words. Anyway, so every once in a while I'd take a swallow of tequila. And I think it helped. I got a lot of good stuff out of him from that.
Did you feel real connection with him, or did you still have that interviewee thing?
I wouldn't claim a real connection. I think he knew he was doing something for the publicity, but I think he was not a publicity hungry or publicity competent guy. He was giving me himself, and whether it was helped or hurt the publicity, he wouldn't know, but he couldn't make something up to gain attention. I think what he said was genuine.
Yeah. I've had guests who have a lot of modules of things they're going to say. Like they know they're trying to move everything so they can give their story the way they want to. And it's like, yeah, I prefer when there's just some moment where you actually forget that and we actually,
Go
talk.
on, will you broadcast it?
No, just with this stuff. But I do these. There's a sense of,
oh, good.
There are times when people forget the script.
I'll make sure of calling attention to it.
But you're always fun with
Let
these.
me know as soon as it's on.
But tell me, you do have the list of your top Dylan songs with you.
Okay.
Let's
Okay, this is a list of my top Dylan songs, not the list of the top late Dylan songs, which is a different list.
Yeah. In the book, there's 10 plus 1, 10 late plus 1 pre. But yeah.
Here's the top Dylan songs, top 20. I'll go fast. Desolation Row, Highway 61, Rolling Stone, I'll Keep It With Mine. There's a story where that was one that he recorded in '63, a year after he came to New York, never released, finally till 1980s on Biograph or something. But it was sort of like a secret lover's song, and I don't know, but it works. Yeah. I'll Keep It With Mine. But then maybe the best love song, If You See Her, Say Hello, which is on Blood on the Tracks. Blind Willie McTell, I think it's dropped from Inferno, or maybe it's, probably dropped from Inferno. Dystopian masterpiece, might be one of the very best songs he's ever done. Up to Me, Good-Natured, again, dropped from Blood on the Tracks. I don't know why, but Up to Me was the title of his good friend and fatal motor crash death guy, Richard Farina. You ought to read David Hodges' book about that guy. They were really close.
Been down so long, it looks like Up to Me.
I kind of think that Up to Me, the title, might have something to do with Up to the novel of Farina, Up to Me, which was the only one he did before he died. Boots of Spanish Leather, still slavishly devoted to that. Mississippi, it's got that line with State of Mississippi, just a day too long, which is like extremely telling about the Christian period, but is a great song otherwise. And then the only song on his first album, but a great, great song, I think, a purely beautiful song, is his song to Woody. I think you can forget about the rest of the songs on the album. I know Elijah Wald, who wrote Dylan Goes Electric, a great book, but he differs with me about that first album. I think it's a lot of throwaway stuff, but A Song to Woody is just exemplary and beautiful. Anyway, of course, times they are changing. I have a whole long 11-page riff about that song, which I'll leave to the book, but it's the exemplar of his new method of songwriting. My Back Pages, everyone knows. Red River Shore, a kind of late one, dropped from an album, of course. I don't know why he does this, but it's just beautiful, romantic. Subterranean Hotel Blues, just remains so great. Probably an early aspect of rapping. I wouldn't call it the first, but it's up there. And then I told you about I Threw It All Away, how romantic it was, and it led to a just 3-year romance for me. Mr. Tambourine, Positively 4th Street, and Ballad of the Thin Man, the two great sarcastic Dylan songs that nobody's done better. That line about, I bet if one time you could stand inside my shoes, you would see what a drag it is to see me. It was about, there were a lot of envious people in that complete unknown time who said, how come not me? How come not me? And it turns out they were all good, they were all worthy, but they were not Dylan. And I guess I'll give you quickly the 10 in the book. Yeah. All right, 11 pages on why things have changed, explains in an elaborate way what late Dylan's songwriting features that discontinuity of many selves, then a series of dreams, then when the night comes falling from the sky, then Blind Willie McTell, then most of the time, hugely romantic, then Dark Eyes. I heard him do a duet of that with Patti Smith, and that alone changed me to listening to Dylan again after the Jesus period. Ring Them Bells, great. License to Kill, complicated but important. Every Grain of Sand, an amazingly spirited, spiritual. Mississippi, and I'll keep it with mine. I guess I repeated that.
I will give my one differing interpretation. I always thought License to Kill was about Israel.
Was about what?
Israel. The way the album it's from, Infidels, it has Neighborhood Bully, which is also Israel. I always assumed License to Kill was about Israel's policies, we'll say, in the early 80s.
Well, I don't think he was like a big advocate of killing.
No. And I think it's against how they acted.
You could be right. I felt, again, it was part of his argument with God, that God felt he had a license to kill whoever he wanted, whether deserving or not, and that it was that rather than a more parochial interpretation.
Understood. I first heard it when I was 12 or 13, so different age, I guess. My big question that I always ask people, and you've been on the show a few times, what are you reading now?
I'm reading side by side. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Henry James, What Maisie Said, because I had a weird dream in which I had written a very influential review of The Spoils of Poynton, which was another short James novel I'd never read, didn't know why I wanted to read it, had not read much Henry James, but got so deeply into it because once you get into it, it's hard at the start because James is not an easy stylist. But once it clicks for you, it's like smooth as silk, and you can't stop. And so I now started on What Maisie Knew. I read a few easy ones in the past, Portrait of a Lady and like that. But What Maisie Knew, again, is like, incredibly complex rhetoric, but once it clicks, you're golden. Mm-hmm. So I'm reading next to that Shadow Ticket, The New Pension. And what they had in common is that both of them separately, distinctively invented new languages. No one writes like Henry James. It's a one-of-a-kind thing. No one writes like this pension novel. It's different from his others. It's all in kind of 30s gangland slang, but it's done so well that you really get comfortable with it and get a kick out of it.
In fact, I had to put Shadow Ticket on hold while I was reading this. So once I get home, I'm going to dive right back into that. I was about 40 pages in. I thought I really need to read Ron's book. I'm going to put Pynchon aside because I will just spend all my time reading that novel.
Well,
so next,
I'm honored to be considered in the same cohort.
Yeah. You're important writers in my life. So, Ron, thanks so much for coming back on the show, and thank you for bringing us this Dylan.
Well, that was great, Gil. Those are a lot of questions that I ask myself. So.
And that was Ron Rosenbaum. Go get Bob Dylan, Things Have Changed by Ron. It's out now from Melville House Press. It is an amazing exploration of Dylan's songs, of the phenomenon of Dylan, of the life and how it interweaves with the art. And, well, like the second subtitle says, it's a kind of biography. As Ron describes it, it's a biographical meditation. And boy, is it a good one. You should also go get Ron's past books, like Explaining Hitler and the Shakespeare Wars. And if you can find the collection of his journalism and essays, The Secret Parts of Fortune, get that right away. It's available as an ebook, so you got no excuses. But the print edition, I have 3 or 4 copies of it in my house. Just the ability to just fall in anywhere, to read some of the profiles, the journalism, the essays. It's that book will prove endlessly rewarding. Now, Ron's on Facebook, but I am not, so you'll have to search him out yourself. He's got a Twitter account at Ron Rosenbaum1, all one word, but it looks like he hasn't posted in a few months there. If you need to reach him, let me know and I'll send word. Thanks for listening to the Virtual Memories Show. You can support this podcast by telling other people about it. There's no better way to build an audience than through word of mouth. Also, visit Apple's podcast page for us and leave a rating and review. Every little bit helps, You can also support the show by telling me what you like and don't like about it and who you'd like to hear me record with, or what movie or TV show or book or piece of music or comic or theater or art exhibition or whatever you think I should turn listeners on to. And you can do that by sending me a postcard, letter, email, DM if we're connected on Instagram or Blue Sky, or by leaving a message on my Google Voice number, which is 973-869-9659. Messages can be up to 3 minutes long. It'll cut you off after that, so call back and leave another message if you do. And let me know if it'd be okay to include your message in an upcoming episode of the show. You might have something interesting to share with our listeners, but I'd never run someone's message without their permission, so let me know. Now, if you've got money to spare, I appreciate it, but don't give it to me. I've got a day job that pays the bills. You should give to individuals and institutions in need. You can find people through GoFundMe, Patreon, Kickstarter, Crowdfunder, Indiegogo, all those crowdfunding platforms, where you'll find people who really need help just trying to make ends meet or get an artistic project going, covering medical bills or car payments or veterinary bills, and just a few dollars from you might make a real difference in their lives. Now, when it comes to institutions, I give to my local food bank and World Central Kitchen every month, but there are a lot of other things you can give to. The Poor People's Campaign, Freedom Funds, Election Funds, Planned Parenthood, and Women's Choice. There's a lot of things you can do with your money to try to help build a better world, so I hope you'll give. Now, our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You can visit my archives at vmspod.com to check out my 2018 conversation with Hal, where you can learn more about his art, his music, and more. And you can follow Hal on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. That's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week with another great conversation. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download all our past episodes at Apple Podcasts and other podcast sources. And you can find all my episodes and sign up for the Virtual Memories Show newsletter at vmspod.com. And I'm also on Blue Sky and Instagram and YouTube as vmspod. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.